It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Welcome to the A2theK Wrestling Show, where A2theKania is running wild. I am Carl, and joining me as always, the other half of the middle-aged outlaws, the one and only, it's Anthony, everybody. Anthony,
You're
say
goddamn
hello
right
to
it
the
is.
people.
Hello,
Goddamn right it
people.
is.
We're here again. We're here
We
again. And
are.
what an exciting one we've got, Carl. We've got the WrestleMania
Ho-ho.
Rewind. We've been looking forward to this. For those of
We
you
have.
who join us on social media, for starters, thank you very much. We always enjoy the interactions. But secondly, you'll have noticed Carl's fantastic tournament bracket for
Oh, stop
nominate
it.
or determining the best WrestleMania. For those of you who didn't follow the bracket, essentially we landed on WrestleMania 17 as the best WrestleMania ever, as voted for by you, the people.
We did.
So, to cap that off, we thought, well, the WrestleMania Rewind, it's only right that we rewind right on back to WrestleMania 17 and let's talk about this, what is now the best WrestleMania.
Let us do it, my friend. So, the greatest WrestleMania of all time, as voted by you. So,
This is the
if we.
Bret Hart of WrestleManias, guys, the best there is.
The best there was. And will it be the best there ever will be? Let's see.
I always
Um,
like to hope not, to be honest, because you strive, you know. Anyway, let's
yes.
talk about it, Carl. I'm excited.
So,
I'm excited.
if we do this like we would do any other kind of This Week in Wrestling kind of thing, we'll run through the card, shall we? So, I'm not going to talk about
Sorry.
Sunday Night Heat, but, X Factor were on there. They had a match. That was cool. But for the WrestleMania card itself, we kick things off with Chris Jericho defending his Intercontinental title against William Regal, and he picked up the win to defend that belt. We then had Taz and the APA teaming up to take on Right to Center, with Taz and APA picking up the win. The Hardcore title was on the line in a triple threat match with Raven taking on Big Show and Kane, with Kane becoming the new Hardcore champion. The European title was on the line as Test took on Eddie Guerrero, in which Eddie Guerrero picked up the win and the belt along with it. Kurt Angle took on Chris Benoit in an absolute wrestling classic that Kurt Angle came away from with the win. The women's title was also on the line, with Ivory from Right to Center taking on Chyna, as Chyna defeated her to become the new women's champion. In a street fight, we had Vince McMahon with Stephanie McMahon and Trish Stratus in his corner taking on Shane McMahon and, wheelchair-bound Linda McMahon in this street fight, with Mick Foley as the special guest referee, and the winner was, of course, Shane O'Mac. We had the WWE tag titles on the line in a tables, ladders and chairs match. The Dudleys defending against Edge and Christian, and the Hardys with Edge and Christian picking up the win. We had a trip down memory lane with a gimmick battle royal match consisting of all of your favourite wrestling gimmicks over the years, with the ultimate winner at the end being Iron Sheik. Undertaker took on Triple H with his streak, obviously. Before it was probably common knowledge at the time, but his streak obviously remained undefeated, as we know, as he picked up the win against Triple H. And the main event was The Rock versus Stone Cold #2, and Stone Cold picked up the win via some interesting shenanigans.
Dare say
So
one of the more
that
infamous WrestleMania moments happened here.
certainly, and one of the most polarizing as well, which we'll come on to
Oh yes.
as we
Oh yeah.
as we get there. But to kick things off, the Intercontinental title. Chris
You know what's
Jericho,
so weird
William Regal.
about WrestleMania Rewinds, right? And I need to mention it because of the first match we're going to talk about, and that's the fact that you look at it through nostalgic goggles now, and I'm just like, I love this match, and purely because William Regal's in the ring. I
I
fucking
know.
love it. I miss that guy.
It is crazy to think, how many years has it been since we saw William Regal? And this was when he was at the height of his, being the Commissioner Regal thing. And I remember so much the build up to this. It was, it wasn't quite Austin McMahon, but at the same time, it was William Regal was putting Jericho, in some serious matches to kind of get back at him. And obviously Jericho was getting revenge on Regal by doing things like pissing in his tea. Um, because why
And
wouldn't you?
as you know, though, as a British guy, that's just
You just,
no.
you just don't
That's
piss in
not on.
someone's tea.
That's
You
not
know what I
on
mean?
Jericho.
It's not on. No one pisses in a British guy's tea. But yeah, so what do you think of this match, Anthony, to kick off the show with the Intercontinental Championship with the likes of Chris Jericho and William Regal?
I will say what struck me And don't get me wrong, this was a really, really good match. And as you say, I mean, to be honest, I probably can't remember the build-up as well as you. But not that being said, two absolute fucking professionals in the ring here. It was always going to be a good match. And what struck me looking back on it as well is the fact that like this was like an opener. This was like a let's ease into WrestleMania kind of match. And I don't know, I feel like we've not had a match of that caliber start the show in a long time. Apologies for anyone who disagrees with that. But I don't know, it was just I try not to be too favourable to it in some senses because I know that I'm like sort of nostalgically looking at it like, oh yeah, Jericho's a legend, so is Regal, and it's all boss. But come on, I mean, how can they put on a bad match together? It was. I would have had more of it, to be honest. I would have had like a lot more of these two going at each other,
Yeah,
and I
like
can't remember too many matches between them. I'm sure they did have some, like because they both come from WCW. Am I right in saying as well? So
yeah.
I'm sure they have had plenty of other matches together, but this is probably the main one I recall. So for me, I would have had a lot more from them as well. But again, that's we can't be spoiled with these things.
Yeah, for me, like the surprising factor, and I suppose if you look at the amount of matches on the card, was it wasn't the lengthiest of matches. It was a lot more, it was a lot longer than the match that we'll come on to in a second. But it didn't run super long. But at the same time, I felt like they still managed to get they crammed a lot into what was a relatively short match, and there was a lot of stuff in there with Jericho working the arm, so he wasn't able to do the walls of Jericho, for example. So he ended up getting the pin with the lion salt. And from a ring psychology standpoint, Regal's one of the best. Jericho's fantastic as well. And I just felt that in the short amount of time they had, the way that they could tell this story and make it believable, but still put on a really good, kind of wrestling clinic, almost.
It's the right way to put it. It's a clinic because, like, Regal, especially, like, and this is no disrespect to Jericho. He's an absolute legend. But Regal is really well known for his classic British chain wrestling style, and you can't argue that his ability and his chops in the ring in that sense. It was always going to be a clinic.
Yeah, definitely. So a fantastic way to kick off what was your favourite WrestleMania of all time. The next match, however, I take a bit of an umbrage to be fair. So the next match on the card,
okay.
So right
me.
right to centre, where I didn't mind them, to be fair. I thought they were a great little heel faction. It was obviously Steven Richards had put together, he'd corrected, he'd cured, he'd fixed, broken people like, the Godfather who became the Good Father. I think Val Venus, who obviously had a porn star gimmick, became like, just fucking whatever the fuck he became. So he was, we had Bull Buchanan in there for some reason. Yeah, I don't really get it, but at the same time, I liked him as a unit.
You mean B squared, surely?
Of course, B squared. But yeah, so we had this, and we had Taz and the APA teaming up to kind of take them on, which kind of felt a bit thrown together. For me, this wasn't a pay-per-view caliber match, and that's the problem I've got with it. It just didn't feel like it belonged on the card, really. And I know, at WrestleMania, you need matches like that sometimes because I don't know. I feel like there's always this thing around like the second match being like the bathroom break match for some reason. I know Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens were really unhappy that their match wasn't the opener. It was like match 2 or match 3 or whatever it was on the card, and they felt like that's the kind of bathroom break kind of match. So maybe this is the case for this one, and that's why it got the position it was on the card. But I don't know, it was really short. I don't think it lasted more than about 3 or 4 minutes, and I think probably the entrances and the pre-match thing with the APA, and don't get me wrong, I love the APA. I love the little wooden door that you had to enter through, even though there was no walls. Like, I loved all that. But they were backstage with Jacqueline, who was like accompanying them to the ring, and they spent more time on that and the entrances than I think they did the actual match. So yeah, baffled me that this was on the WrestleMania card, if I'm honest. But
it just feels like that sort of filler thing, doesn't it?
Sadly. Yeah,
and I think for something that we're dubbing like the best, the greatest WrestleMania, it's mad that anything felt like filler. But that's not a massive criticism, by the way, because you're always going to have the weakest match on the card. There's no two ways about that. And I dare say, Carl, this is probably the weakest match on the card.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, if there was any kind of bright sparks to it, was the fact that obviously WrestleMania 17 took place in Houston, Texas. Bradshaw, massive Texan. He obviously got
Is
to
he?
pick up the win. He is indeed. He got to pick up the win, and obviously, the fans were pretty happy with that. So, and obviously the heel group that was right to centre got pretty battered, to be fair. So, yeah, okay. Was it pay per view worthy? Nah, not in my opinion, but it was okay. We move on to the next match, which I just think is a fucking brilliant match. So fun. The hardcore title on the line. Raven was the champion, taking on the likes of Big Show and Kane. So straight away from that visual, you've got little old Raven, like 6'2", 6'1", whatever. You've got Big Show and Kane as his two opponents. So straight
I
away,
know a
yeah.
man who probably doesn't feel short normally.
Well, yeah,
Suddenly
exactly.
the little guy.
Exactly. So straight away, it's something that you get interested in, and then you see that it's for the hardcore title. You start wrestling all over the arena. I believe as well, and I don't know how true this is, but so there's a spot in there where they start driving golf buggies, right? And Raven gets in one. And Big Show manages to clamber into the back of the golf cart. So Raven's driving it and he loses control of it and he ends up crashing it into a wall. But if you watch it back, which obviously we've done for this segment, you can see that he drives over the main power line for the whole arena. And then off the back of this, I looked into it and people were kind of saying like if he would have tore that cable, the whole power could have gone out to the whole arena, which would have been fucking brilliant to be fair. But so we had that nearly happen, and then you've got Kane getting inside a golf cart with the referee jumps in the back, and he almost forgets to stop braking and effectively just runs Raven over. Like the whole thing is just fucking bonkers. But you get people getting
It's a
thrown through
shame.
walls, doors, windows. It's fantastic.
This reminded me how good the hardcore title was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't know. I know they're trying not to do this sort of thing in this day and age, and with PG and all that bollocks. But this is the sort of thing that the 24/7 title could be, even if they didn't make it look as hardcore. But it just really reminded me how good the hardcore stuff was, because most of it was humorous and gimmicky. It wasn't like you hear the hardcore title and you assume it's going to be like blading and dangerous spots and stuff like that, but it wasn't all that. And don't be wrong, you've just mentioned about Kane nearly running Raven over, so there were some dangerous shit going on. But I don't know, they did not have some fun with the hardcore title over the years.
No, they did. And also, for anyone who is watching this on YouTube, yes, I did forget to cycle through the images, and yes, you did just see me cycle through the first two. But we've already. I'll go back. We've spoken about Regal and Jericho. That was dead good. We've spoken about Taz and Right to Censor. That wasn't so good. And now we've got a little shot of Kane, Big Show, and
So we
Raven.
fixed it now, okay?
So
back
yeah,
off.
okay. You know how much editing goes into this post. That's what And I mean, I say we. Anthony's life was basically taken up by editing. We found OBS. We do it this way. It's live. Sometimes we fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
It's usually me because I'm controlling it, but it's cool. So
It gives a
yeah,
more improvisational tone.
it does, right? And obviously you're like, these guys, so crazy, so silly. And that's what we are. But yeah, all in all, the match was good, I thought. Yeah, so we could have taken out the rest of the show, Raven, you crazy bastard. But
How funny would that have been?
it was so funny. But yeah, just all round good fun, and as you say, just memories of how good the hardcore title was and how fun of a match you could actually make it when it's not just a bunch of idiots,
Do you know what's a
chasing you
shame?
around.
Like, I'll give him his due. Raven's one who he doesn't stick in my memory for WWE, WWF, whatever. But he was there. He did some good stuff. But do you know what I mean? Like, almost kind of unsung in a sense, because like I suppose he put his time. He put some years in, but I don't know. I never really think of him with WWE. Like you look back at
Yeah.
stuff like this, and go, oh yeah, but I don't know. He doesn't sort of stick in my mind as a WWE guy, and that's probably because he was so synonymous with ECW, I believe it was.
Yeah, so I think, well, ECW and WCW, I think he had Raven's flock in WCW with the likes of Billy Kidman and stuff. But I think he came over around the time of the invasion angle, which was about to happen after this WrestleMania. So he'd not been there too long. but then I think he disappeared either during or towards the end of the invasion angle, and then he ended up making another run where he was wearing a kilt and he had dreadlocks. I remember.
Oh yeah, I do
Do you
remember
remember
that.
that?
Yeah.
He came back a little bit for that, but yeah, he didn't spend that much time in WWE really as Raven. So, but yeah, it's crazy looking back and thinking, especially for the hardcore scene, how good he was there.
Yeah, he definitely
But
like if he didn't fuck around with his character, he could have had like a good tenure there, really, I suppose.
yeah, definitely.
Well, I forgot about the gimmick change. That's a good point. That's what happened.
That's what happened, and that's why you don't remember him. He was wearing a kilt.
Yeah.
So we had that match, and the next one is another one which might shock you, Anthony. So Test was the European champion, and he defended it against Eddie Guerrero. And for me, this match just felt a bit meh, which is crazy when you consider how good Eddie Guerrero ended up being. So
I
this
will
was,
say, and I don't want to. I'm not saying this to be a cunt because I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I was kind of not surprised though because I don't recall Test really being that good. Do you know what I mean? He was a big guy, and he got that big guy status in WWE. Do you know what I mean? But like as a wrestler, and in terms of putting on a match, I don't. And I know it was all cut very short, so I'm trying not to be disrespectful. But like, I don't. I don't recall any particular like, oh, he had a banger of a match Test. Do you know what I mean? So I'm kind of not surprised given who Eddie was working with, and I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that. I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't remember Test being particularly great in the ring. You know?
yeah. You're not wrong. To be fair, I think he he was really good. I felt as part of TNA. That was when he was
Yeah.
pretty good then. Obviously, he went back to being. Was he in the Un Americans at one point? He might have been. I can't remember.
I
But he also
think yeah,
had a
because
run.
he's Canadian or was Canadian, wasn't he? So I think he did have a run as one of the Un-Americans. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was in there for a little bit, and then he went solo. But then he had a thing with Stacy Keibler as well, didn't he? Where like she was
Mm.
his manager, but he was like being abusive to her or something. I can't remember. But
Mm.
yeah, it's a shame really because he obviously Test made his appearance as he was dating Stephanie, and then the next minute she married Triple H, and then it was like, okay, we're just dropping that storyline now. And it was like, oh, and then he just didn't have
Classic
anything to do.
WWE.
So he did kind of flounder for a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. This was obviously the Radicals had just kind of formed in WWE at the time, all defected from WCW, and I don't know. This was just not a classic Eddie match, and I think
Mm.
this was before. I believe he was doing the. Was it before he was doing the Mamacita stuff with China? I think it was. Um, I can't remember honestly.
I don't know.
Um,
I don't know because this is not far off Invasion 17,
yeah, maybe it's after then.
and
But I don't know.
after
I don't know what
Invasion
it
he was going
was.
Latino Heat.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It felt off. Like he didn't know what his character was almost. And obviously you had Perry Saturn at ringside for the whole of it, and then Dean Malenko had to come down and basically help him pick up the win. It just felt a bit, I don't know, a bit cumbersome and a bit messy, and it definitely
Yeah,
just wasn't one of Guerrero's finest. I felt.
that's the thing. Let's be honest. It's not one that goes down in like Eddie's best matches or anything, is it? To be fair,
Yeah,
well, it wasn't bad, but it was okay.
yeah, it was just like meh. It was average. I felt. It probably feels more average based on the rest of the match card. I would say. And
Mm.
especially based on the match that followed it, which was, of
And
course,
to be honest, it's a fucking stacked card, isn't it? So you make a really good
yeah,
point there.
with obviously the next match being Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle, probably two of the finest to ever do it. And I described the Jericho and Regal match as an absolute wrestling clinic, and this was the same. Like, don't get me wrong, they went on to have better matches than this. The match they
We
had,
didn't know that was going to happen, though.
well, exactly. I mean, it might have been WrestleMania 18. I can't remember. No, it couldn't have been 18 because Jericho was in the main event for that, wasn't he? But they had a match, maybe it was 19, where it was Jericho. I don't know when it was, but Jericho took on Benoit and Kurt Angle. I think it was all of them. And I think Kurt Angle might have been the European and the Intercontinental Champion, and he lost both of them on the same
What
night
mania was that? Yeah,
without
I
being
remember that.
pinned. So, like for example, that one was really good.
Mm.
But also, Benoit and Kurt did have better matches than this, but at the same time, it was still an excellent wrestling match. It was still a
Oh
clinic
yeah.
from two of the best to ever do it. So yeah, it was different. You know what I liked about it was it just felt it was different to everything else on the card. It was almost like chain wrestling submission. It was just so different. It just
Yeah,
broke it up
yeah. When
nicely. I
you
felt.
when you're surrounded by like, and it's no disrespect to these type of matches, but when you're surrounded by hardcore matches, street fights, TLC matches, and so on, this was like just wrestling at its best, like wrestling,
Hmm.
wrestling. I think you're quite right there. Given the surrounding matches, it probably stood out in that sense. Weirdly,
Yeah.
because everything else is gimmicky and it's meant to stand out on its gimmick, and this stood out for not being gimmicky.
Well, I think because everything else was a gimmick, and these guys are just two dudes who love wrestling, just absolutely going after each other. So, yeah, I felt it kind of stood out in the right way, if that makes sense. And it was refreshing, and it was a bit of a break from what we'd seen up to that point in the night so far. So, yeah, great match. I love these two as wrestlers in terms of their ability and what they can do. Obviously, we know Benoit's career is going to be tarnished, obviously, and rightfully so for
Yeah, it's
everything.
it's
But you
difficult
can't
because
deny that he was a
like
fantastic worker.
it is difficult because I get what WWE are doing with that, but like like for us, like you want to remember matches like this because they were fucking awesome, and I get why he's sort of scrubbed from WWE history. I really do, but I don't know. It is a shame in a lot of. I don't, well, that's really a massive understatement considering what happened. Do you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah,
it's a shame we can't have these matches go down in history in that same way. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But
definitely.
I do get it. I do totally get it.
Yeah. So really good match, really solid, and different to everything else we'd seen up to that point. The match that followed it was a. I'm not sure if this was a returning China. To be honest, I can't. I know that Ivory had been kind of doing a fantastic job as the main female heel. Obviously, she joined right to center. She was previously, like I wouldn't say she was one of the more showing everything off kind of women's wrestlers, to be honest. So it's interesting that they went with her, but she was kind of like super against this and she would always cover up. And, I felt like she played the character really well. And China
Mhm.
had been away for a while. So this was at the point of, obviously, it's very well known that China and Triple H were an item in real life.
Knocking
And
boots.
then, yeah. And then during the Triple H and Stephanie wedding angle, so on and so forth, they ended up developing feelings for each other, and China was the collateral damage in real life off the back of that.
Sadly.
So
And you
she
like to think it
went,
wouldn't affect their career, but it fucking did.
yeah, massively. So she went away for a bit, and she did come back and ended up winning the women's title here, and it was a very short match. It was a squash match. China looked fantastic in this match as well. She had a great entrance. She came out with a big fucking firework bazooka thing that she shot into the audience. She had some kind of like tribal, look to her with like this headband. She just looked like, the like a fucking Amazon warrior, do you know what I mean? Which is what I'm guessing she
Yeah.
was trying to
Almost a glamazon.
almost a glamazon.
Sorry, Beth. We know that's your thing.
But yes, she was great. It was like a return to form, and obviously she picked up the win quite easily. But at the same time, I don't know. It also kind of missed the mark for me in another way, in the sense of that China was the big, obviously the face, and Ivory was the heel. But there was certain moments where China just like, lifted her shoulders up and was like, no, I'm not finished with you, kind of thing, and almost felt a bit more heelish than Ivory did, which I don't know. I always have a bit of a problem with that.
Yeah, I get that. It's echoes back to modern day when we look at Charlotte and go, you can't you struggle to be a face because you're more heely than anything.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I only ever really remember China being a bad guy.
Yeah.
So it kind of like that was more synonymous with it. In all fairness,
Mm. True story.
true that.
And then the next match was surprisingly over delivered for me, and that's obviously
What
Vince
the fuck
McMahon
was this?
taking on Shane
What was
McMahon.
this,
So
Carl?
my God, so obviously Stephanie was Daddy's little princess at this point. So at the Armageddon, like prior to
Listen,
this.
Shane Mummy's boy.
Yes, he was. So Daddy's Little Princess versus Mama's Boy Shane, and in storyline, Vince was screwing Trish Stratus as well. Apparently, because why wouldn't you book yourself in that storyline if you own the company? Of course you would. He basically got it on with everyone. He had a kissing scene with Tori Wilson at one point, insane. But anyway, so it was Vince with Trish and Stephanie in his corner. And then obviously Shane had Linda in his corner. Now, something had happened at this point where Linda was like comatose almost, so she was wheeled around in a wheelchair. She didn't speak, didn't react, and all this time, like Vince and Trish would be like kissing each other right in front of her face, and she'd just be like comatose.
For the story.
For the story.
Scripted.
And then, yeah, obviously, this was the big kind of moment where Linda snapped out of that coma, kicked Vince in the balls, and Shane ended up picking up the win. He hadn't had loads of matches by this point, but he was always looking for ways to, step up his kind of look what I can do kind of thing, and he did still quite an impressive, rope to rope kind of drop kick thing that he did as well, and it was just a physical match. You can say whatever you want about Vince and Shane, but they will take some serious bumps and they will do some crazy shit. I don't think they're all there.
I really don't know what it is about Shane, but I still never look at him as a wrestler. Like the shit he's done in his career.
Yeah.
And I still don't give him credit as a wrestler. He's still just, it's just his dad. His dad owns the company. That's why he's there. And I feel disrespectful doing that because like he's definitely he's been part of some really good matches. He's definitely he knows his way around a ring. But I'll never, for whatever reason, my mind never goes to him as like a wrestler. I'll never give him credit for being a wrestler.
That's right, folks. You heard it here first. Shane McMahon knows his way around a ring.
A brass ring.
I see. I kid, of course, but no. This was this is the kind of thing you expect to see at WrestleMania. It was, a father and son, a family drama, crazy shit happening. It was, I don't know. I thought it was really, really good.
Oh, this is like the very definition of Attitude Era kind of booking as well. Let's be honest.
100%. So yeah.
And I feel, you never mentioned Foley at all. I'm surprised at that.
Yeah, so he does get involved, doesn't he? He does end up kind of because obviously
not as much as you'd expect, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that is true.
Considering he's there on the sort of the booking of it, but yeah. Forgive me again because you can probably remember the build up around it. How did he end up being the guest referee in this?
Yeah, I can't actually remember to be fair.
just a thing that happened.
He was just there. Yeah, don't know. Do not know. But yeah, he did get involved. He did beat up on Vince at one point, and then Linda kicked him in the balls, and then Shane finished him off. So Shane ended up the victor. Family things. We ended up getting to see something a little bit similar, 3 years later at WrestleMania. Oh no, it was. In fact, it was the year before, wasn't it? So it was WrestleMania 16. We got to see the McMahon in every corner.
Right.
So that was WrestleMania 2000. So we had that, and then the following year we still had McMahon's in, every corner, basically.
Yeah. To be fair, I think by the next WrestleMania, hadn't they started Invasion?
Yeah.
Which obviously was Shane O'Mac and Steph, wasn't it?
It was.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting that we had, such McMahon orientated, feuding take such kind of precedence in the main pay-per-views over them years.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You can't fault the match. I thought it for what it was at WrestleMania for a gimmicky style match. Yeah, I thought it was great. And another match that was fantastic is the fucking TLC match, Anthony.
Historic.
I love this match.
You might say historic.
I just love this match so fucking much. It's just so good. It really, really is. It's like, well, you can have a ladder match, you can have a table match, you can have a chairs match, or you can have a tables, ladders, and chairs match, and have everything.
And why? Because we got the guys who do the tables, the guys who do the ladders, and then the other two who was like, well, we'll have chairs.
Well, to be fair, they get a lot of shit for this, but they came up with the concerto, didn't they? Probably specifically for this match type. But it was like, well, we're really good with chairs because we beat your skull in. And it was like, okay. So it did kind of make sense. Everyone had their specialty. It spelt out TLC, which is tender love and care, but also tables, ladders, and chairs. It was all a play on words. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even need to say a lot about this match. There, it was a fantastic match. These are the guys who fucking invented it. So who's going to do it any better than these?
This for me was like, this is tag team wrestling, which we
Yeah,
haven't seen in WWE in God knows how long.
it's the funny thing, isn't it? Because no one associates WWE with good tag team wrestling, but this was it. This was like probably the best that you ever see tag team wrestling in any company. And yet, how did they fall so badly? Like, tag teams
Mental.
are just ridiculously booked now. It's so abysmally booked now.
Well,
I
they're
don't even know
just
who the tag team champions are on Raw.
they're just an afterthought. Like even back then, like they looked like tag teams. They dressed the same. You know what I mean? You'd look at them and go, "Oh, are they a team?" Now it's literally just any random pairing, and it's like, yeah, they're a tag team now.
Mm.
It's bizarre.
And naturally, WWE have moved that winning formula over to the women's division. So now they just randomly slap women together and go, right, you're a tag team now.
Pretty
Natalia and
much.
Tamina.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
You guys have got famous dads. Yeah, that works.
Sorry, slight digression. But yeah,
Slight digression, but great match. Obviously
indeed.
the iconic moment of Edge spearing Jeff Hardy off the ladder is something which will go down as one of the most iconic moments in WrestleMania. I don't think it made our list. To be fair, it was probably just on the
But
outside of it.
that's the thing, because we were doing a top 10 and this might have been like 11 or something. It was definitely close. I
Hmm.
know it was up for discussion when we were making the list. But yeah, like you say, it's definitely an iconic moment.
Certainly was. So that was epic. And then for me, as a kid growing up in the early 90s, loving wrestling, the gimmick battle royal. I can't speak highly enough about this. People look at
See,
this and like,
this was probably a little more lost on me than it was for your good self.
well, I mean, firstly, you had fucking Bobby the Brain Heenan, the fucking best commentator ever. I think at this point he just had his first bout of throat cancer, and he was there. He was on commentary. He didn't miss a beat. He was fantastic. Fucking love Bobby. Obviously, Gorilla had a. I think he'd probably already passed away at this point, or he was in really ill health. I can't really remember. So we had Mean Gene with him,
Mm.
and these two were fantastic. I just love them two. Obviously, Heenan and Monsoon were the best, but Mean Gene in his own right is fantastic as well.
Oh yeah,
And it was just the crazy. Like, I love gimmicks. Like, for me, in like 92, 91, it was all about gimmicks. You had a policeman, a Mountie, you had a convict, you had like all. It just all
yeah.
made sense.
A
So
dentist
well,
and
exactly, exactly. Fucking an army guy, a hockey player. Um,
Repo Man.
yeah, Repo Man.
Forgot about
Fucking
that.
love Repo Man. So a hillbilly, literally. So yeah, I fucking love a good gimmick battle royal. But if you look at the people who were in this, so you had obviously the Iron Sheik won the whole thing, but you had Brother Love, who obviously was the Undertaker's first ever manager. Obviously is the guy who runs Raw today, so that's great. Um,
Crazy that.
we
Crazy.
have we had the Bushwhackers, we had Jim Cornette, we had Doink, Duke the Dumpster Drozy, legend, Earthquake, Gobbledygooker, the Goon, who's obviously the hockey guy, Michael Hayes, the Freebird. Not really a gimmick, to be fair, but whatever. The thing about this is they had 19 participants, so I feel like they kind of ran out of people that they could book, but fair
I
play to
get
them
that.
anyway.
Yeah.
You had Hillbilly Jim, you had Kamala, you had Kim Chi, who was obviously Kamala's handler, One Man Gang, Repo Man, Sergeant Slaughter, Tugboat, and Nikolai Volkov. So just a load of crazy bastards, a load of legends, and it just made for a super fun. But I mean, who doesn't love a battle royal? We love the Royal Rumble. We love battle
Yeah. Can't
royals,
beat a good
and
battle royal.
to see all these guys come back and get a WrestleMania payday, to see Bobby Heenan back announcing was, still to this day, just love it. So people look at this and it's like, oh, this was awful. It was like bathroom break material, but nah, loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And then the second to last match of the card, Undertaker Triple H, the first of what would become a trilogy because they ended up facing each other 2 WrestleManias in a row later down the line. But this was the first one. This was when Undertaker was the, big evil, Dead Man Inc. And fantastic match. Again, these two, in my opinion, they've always had really good chemistry together. And not too much else to say about it, really. It was.
There isn't. I mean, I think this is at a point, and correct me if you disagree, but I think I'm trying to remember when they started making the streak a big thing. Because obviously we had the streak here, but when was it like such a big thing of like trying to beat the streak? Because I feel like the next 2 times they went up against each other, it was a bigger deal to try and sort of end the streak. I don't think it was the case here. Don't be wrong, he still had a number of WrestleManias under his belt at this point, but I don't know. I feel like it wasn't booked in that way. Do you know what I mean?
To be honest, it was never even spoken about. I think after this, you had the likes of him and fucking Nathan Jones taking on Mark Henry and the Big Show and stuff like that.
Don't even get me fucking started on that one.
So it was stuff.
What was he called? The fucking Beast of Boggo Road or whatever. Fucking spinny
what
kick,
was he?
And then we never see the fucker again.
Yeah.
Something about Boggo Road. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was Boggo Road. So obviously it only kind of came into light, as the streak, we're going to talk about it like probably quite a few years after this, like 5 or 6 years maybe.
See, I'm trying to remember when it was a thing, because as stupid as it sounds, it feels like it's always been a thing, but like the streak has, but it, as far as a booked mentionable thing, it hasn't.
Yeah, it's mad how it kind of grew in notoriety towards the end of that streak. It was talked about. It was main event in shows, even without titles on the line and everything, wasn't it? All to do around the streak, which is something they ignored for so many years. So
I think because the thing, it kind of happened by accident, didn't it? I don't think they deliberately had him go. What did he end up with? 21 before he got beaten. Yeah, and I don't think they deliberately did that. Well, they obviously started to deliberately do that towards the end, but like you say, at this point when they're not really mentioning it, you wonder sometimes whether that was just fortunate booking that he never lost.
Definitely, I think if you look at the people he went up against over them years, it's definitely lucky that he held out that streak because there's a couple of times he could have ended up losing that thing. But I think they got to a point where they were like, do you realise he hasn't actually lost in X number of years? And they're like, maybe we can do something with this. But great.
Yeah, you might say he's on a streak.
You might. But this was a fantastic little match, and it was, to think that this wasn't even the main event. We then went on to what was the main event of the evening. It was Rock and Austin 2, and the first
my days.
the first match took place at WrestleMania 15. This is 2 years later. In that first match, Austin picked up the win. Ahead of this one, Austin, even the promo hype video for this with the Limp Bizkit My Way stuff, that was so good. But there was loads of stuff going on ahead of this. There was I
missed the promo packages that were that good, and he played the good music, none of this bullshit you get now.
I know. Back in our day. But they had some weird stuff going on with this, with Vince made Deborah the Rock's manager, and then stuff was happening there. She got injured, and Austin took it out on the Rock because he wasn't protecting her, and all this kind of stuff was happening. They were both still baby faces at this point, but Austin had said ahead of the WrestleMania card that I will do whatever it takes to win that belt, and everyone was just like,
what was about to unfold.
Well, exactly. So this is so polarizing as an event, and that's one of the reasons why it's one of our top Mania moments, and it's because some people loved this based on how much of a shock factor it was. Stone Cold has made a deal with the devil, the literal devil, Vince McMahon. How is this even possible? Other people were like, no, he didn't need to turn him, and that was the end of the Attitude Era, because effectively it was, because we went on to the Invasion stuff pretty much straight after
the
Mania.
Reality Era.
So,
fair point.
This was effectively the end of the Attitude Era, because The Rock after this went on to do movies and stuff for a bit. Austin kind of took his ball and went home when they wanted him to lose to Brock Lesnar. So there was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm one who I liked it. I was
Yeah.
in it for the shock factor. You didn't see it coming, and that's the reason it's so talked about today. I don't think you can knock it for that. I think they should have done it.
Yeah, me too. I am like even just for that visual of like Stone Cold and Vince McMahon shaking hands, like
Yeah,
that alone must have been people like what? Like if you hadn't seen the pay per view and you saw that the next morning, and like as a spoiler, you would go what the and you would pay to what
yeah.
like get that
And
show.
to me, that is the payoff of a long time thing. They built up their hatred of each other for so long that was kind of the payoff, wasn't it? That at
Yeah,
some point that happened, and that's what made it so memorable. So to me, if he just took his ball and went home as he did, without this ever happening, then it wouldn't have been a good end. It wouldn't have been in any way any more interesting. It's like, well, the Stone Cold doesn't like Vince McMahon, so that's how it's always been. I think that the fact that they had this makes it so much more talk. It's much more of a talking point. So how can we not do it?
no,
How can
definitely.
you disagree with this 10?
And I think
The
as well
right choice.
of their WrestleMania trilogy, this probably gets looked at as their finest match that they worked together in terms of the match quality. I
Mm.
obviously still hold a little bit of favour to the 19 match just because it was Austin's retirement and stuff like that. But you can't argue that these two just worked together so well in this match.
Oh yeah.
It was just so damn enjoyable. Do you know what I mean? And it just topped off what was just an epic, card of matches. So yeah, so that was the show. Do you agree? Do you agree with the people, Anthony? Is this the best WrestleMania you've ever seen?
Maybe.
Oh,
It's
okay.
definitely up there. The card is a fantastically stacked card. It's hard to disagree, but if I'm honest, like, and I don't even know what I'd pick for my favorite Mania, but like as an example, one that sticks in my mind, and apologies because I don't remember the numbers, but one that always sticks in my mind, and it'll surprise you because I never speak favorably of the man, but was Rock versus Hogan.
Okay, that was 18. That was the year after.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that was because that I was like this was me getting into wrestling. The year after I was properly into wrestling, and that again is iconic. That moment that Hogan became Hogan again. Because bear in mind, he came into it as a heel. He came into it as part of the NWO. So to see him sort of be won back over by the crowd and get that respect from The Rock, that's memorable as fuck, and it sticks in my mind so much because that's when I was probably at my peak of like wrestling's fucking awesome. So in some senses, I kind of like that one more, but not for the reasons of like looking at the card objectively and going the quality is so much better. It's because that's just
hmm.
what sits with me more. So I'm trying to be fair to say I'm not knocking 17 at all, but like if I was to sit down and watch one, it might be 18 just for the nostalgia factor.
Okay.
Like I would guess this isn't your favorite, and I would guess your favorite is probably yeah in the 90s.
Do you
I
know
can't
what?
place which one, but I would that would be my guess with your good self because for a similar reason.
I actually did our bracket that we did on socials the way I would have answered the bracket that I did, and this did come out as number one for me.
Ah,
So it could be
okay.
the way that I structured the bracket. Maybe it could, but at the same time, you can't really argue because every WrestleMania went up against each other at some point. So,
Yeah,
um, you
yeah, it was
know,
a really clean bracket to be fair. I mean, I think a lot of hard work went in there, and I don't think you can argue its fairness. I don't think it was ever orchestrated so that certain ones didn't go up against others. You know.
yeah, like it was one of them. I tried to make it as fair as I could, and when I did do it, this did end up coming out on top. And I think if you look at it, up and down across all of the card in terms of what it brought and what it offered, other than
Mhm.
maybe one or two matches where we were a bit like meh, like most
There's
of the
that in
card.
every pay per view has a couple of meh. So you
Yeah,
can't really knock that.
and
But
to be
like
fair,
that's the thing. If I look at the card, I sit and look at the card. You got that main event, that iconic heel turn. You've got like you say, there's not a lot you can say about it, but a really good match between the Undertaker and Triple H. I know it's a little bit polarizing, but the gimmick battle royal always good fun. TLC match, fucking amazing. You know, I again street fight wise, you kind of have to have that sort of stuff on there. But then we had some fucking absolute clinics between Kurt and Benoit. We had Jericho and Regal, and yeah, like you could make a really decent card, even just removing those couple of ones. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Definitely,
it is
definitely.
it's an absolute fucking banger of a pay-per-view. But as I say, for me, it's just that that personal edge for me that I'm like, it doesn't stick in my memory as well as others. But that's just because I was
Well,
getting
do you know
into like
what?
certain things I wasn't as invested in because I was still kind of new.
What I think is going to be really interesting is, next week we are going to be looking at what the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time are. So obviously we did moments last week. This week we're doing obviously the WrestleMania Rewind, but next week we're looking at the greatest WrestleMania matches. And I don't think, and I could be wrong because obviously we haven't done the list yet. I don't think we'll see any of the matches from WrestleMania 17 on that list.
Interestingly, I can see your points.
But if you look at it from a cohesiveness as a WrestleMania card, because like, don't get me wrong, there's WrestleManias out there that's had like, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, or Stone
Mm.
Cold versus Bret Hart. These are matches which are so fucking unbelievably good, but the rest of the card was just like bland as fuck or just meh. So
Mm.
for me, this wins because if you look up and down that card, there was excitement that kept you, you know, entertained throughout, which you don't always get from a WrestleMania card. You might get a marquee match or two or three good matches, but the rest of the match like card feels like filler. Whereas for me,
And to
this
be
is one
honest,
that
like
just
even the structure in a way is perfect when you look at it. Like you
mm,
start out with your really good kickoff, then you have your little bit of a come down, you know what I mean, and then we go right back into some like absolute classic matches. Then we get some of the more fun gimmicky stuff, and then we go into that massive heel turn at the end, and it's like it closed the show perfectly, it opened the show perfectly, and it wasn't like let's just keep rising. Do you know what I mean? And everyone's sort of fatigued by we got to the because that's the difficulty as well. You don't want to like tire the audience out before you get to your big main event there. So you need to balance it, and I think the balance was really good on this as well. Like as fun as it is, that battle royal is like it's daft and silly, isn't it? So you don't like it. You're not as like hyped on it, but you can just kind
mm,
of enjoy it, or you can go and get some food or whatever you want to do. That's kind of the I'm not trying to discredit and say that's the bathroom break match, but that's kind of like it's that fun gimmicky thing, isn't it? That you don't have to take too seriously. And I think they balance everything kind of really well on this card as well.
yeah, like for me, a WrestleMania card needs to have a little bit of everything, and
Yeah.
that's what this kind of has. Like the Battle Royal is that nostalgia element that you would normally get from like and there's been better ones, obviously, like the whole Rock Austin Hogan like promo thing that happened. Like that's like
Mm.
holy shit, these three together, that's amazing. So stuff's been better, but this was as part of an overall card, that was the like nostalgia element. You had the technical wrestling element. You had like the drama kind of soap opera element with like the McMahon stuff that was going on and Linda. Like it literally had everything that you could have wanted, as well as some seriously built up rivalries as well. So yeah, I think if you look up and down that card, it's the most cohesive for sure, and that's probably what makes it. That's what is the tip of the iceberg. I think that pushes it over.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
And that is our review of WrestleMania 17 as part of WrestleMania Rewind. So, as Anthony said at the start of the show, thank you everybody who took part in, our tournament bracket as part of A2theK. Obviously, you chose this WrestleMania as your favourite, and it's been great to look back at it and review it and go down memory lane. So, thank you for your participation. I think we've had a couple of other people off the back of this suggest that we do more of this type of thing, maybe even one for SummerSlam, for example. So
I mean, it'd be fun to like it takes a lot of setup. Like, I'm not gonna lie, because like, and again, I really want to make sure you get like people understand the work you put into that tournament, because it wasn't just like throw all the manias in there and see what happens. It was thought out, and the balance was perfect for it. So I don't want to over offer, but I think it'd be cool to eventually do one for the big four in general.
yeah, 100%. So obviously, best like Royal Rumble. Obviously, we did. The first rewind segment we did was at the Royal Rumble
Yeah.
just gone, and we did 1992, which was my favorite Rumble, but that might not be
Mm.
our listeners,
Be
our fans'
interesting to
favorite
see.
Rumbles.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing. It'd be interesting to see what comes out of a tournament, wouldn't it?
yeah, definitely. And if it happens to be 1992 that wins again, then we'll pick the runner-up. Damn it. But yeah, I think it's a great shout. I'd love to do it for SummerSlam, as someone suggested. I'd love to do it for Survivor Series, and then obviously for the Rumble when it rolls around as well. But I think it's something that we've thoroughly enjoyed. We've thoroughly enjoyed seeing everyone's participation and the feedback that you've all had for it as well. And we'll look to continue to bring this kind of stuff on our socials and to help it all feed back into the show that we put on for you. So that was WrestleMania Rewind. That was WrestleMania 17, and we'll be back to talk This Week in Wrestling after this.
You're watching or listening
to A to the K.
The A to the K.
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 These guys are awesome. Check it out.
Check it out. Change your life. You'll be thanking me later.